Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Jim Hessler, and I'm the founder and president of Path Forward Leadership Development. And we're offering some ideas today on making smooth transitions in your business. Let's get right to it. Just for those of you who don't know, Path Forward, we've been around for 22 years. We are a company that believes that leadership creates better lives and reduces suffering in the world. And one of the ways that people suffer is they're put into difficult new roles and not given the support that they need. So today it's about ensuring the success of people as they take on new roles. And in my experience, long experience working with companies on leadership issues, this I saw as a real gap in performance in most companies, that when people are asked to take on new responsibilities, they typically are not given the level of attention and support and structure that's needed for them to flourish and perform at a high level in the new position that they have. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And again, just as a reminder, we're leadership development people. We work with companies to help them grow. We work with them to help them develop their employees and their cultures and the structures that they use in order to run their business effectively. We do that through our Path Forward Leadership Workshop and other services that challenge and support people in their growth at all levels of the organization. So let's talk about who the target is for this conversation. We don't really want to just talk about people who are being promoted to another level. There's all kinds of transitions that take place in businesses. It can be somebody who's been promoted or is slated to be promoted at some point in the future. Somebody who's going through a transition could be somebody even who's just taking on new responsibilities, even without a promotion. Maybe their department has gotten significantly larger, or they've added a team, or new customers, new products, new systems, whatever it is. Somehow their job has changed significantly. And so there's a transition involved there, even though there might not be a promotion involved. And then transitions also occur when people move within the company and move from one part of the business to another, from one field office or division. And they might not even be taking on a new role. They might be taking on the same role, but in a different physical location. All of these are transitions that need to be paid attention to, including the obvious one of somebody's coming on board with your company for the first time. We've actually talked about that in one of our other webinars. But these are some just solid practices and principles that you can apply when people are having to adapt in one way or another to a new challenge in the workplace. So just let's make that as broad as we possibly can. So principle one is to create collective responsibility for the individual's success. So when I'm taking on a new role, let's say I've been promoted into a team lead position in a business. The question that should be asked at senior leadership level especially is, who are all the stakeholders that are going to be interacting with this person, and how can we invest them in the success of this person? And I see this as an important step that's often missed, is we have a new team member, we have a new individual in our organization who's taking on a new role, and it's our collective responsibility to make this person successful. So I suggest anytime a transition is underway, that we gather those stakeholders and we talk about the level of support that the person will need in their new role, and we ask for the support so that we have a lot of fans and a lot of supporters encouraging, supporting, watching out for this person, having their back, right? So we want to create this as a team sport. We don't want to just simply hold the individual responsible for their success in their new role. We want to hold the organization around them collectively responsible for their success. So make it a team sport and create a very broad level of responsibility. The idea that we are all successful, we are all responsible for one another's success and achievement is obviously a linchpin of any good culture. But I think particularly when somebody's going through a transition, bring the people together that will be interacting with that person, or the people that are dependent on that person, or the people that are feeding that person information or work down the line, and say, how can we position this person most effectively to have a good outcome for them and for the rest of the organization. Principle 2, move on to that. Principle 2 is, and I've just kind of had to add this now in the last couple of years. I don't think I would have put this principle up here 5 or 6 years ago, but we obviously have the question now of where's the person, if you're going to ask somebody to take on a new role, you're going to have to address the location issue and whether that person can work from home, whether that person needs to be in an office. And I just suggest in this part of the presentation that you be as clear about that as possible up front, so that there aren't any expectations that aren't met down the road. We've seen some data recently. 70% of employees in a recent survey said they would actually turn down a promotion in return for the opportunity to work from home or work anywhere, anytime, on a flexible schedule. So when you're asking somebody to take on a new role, maybe you need to disattach that from any expectation you have about where they're going to be doing the work, or even how much time you're going to expect to see them or have them available to you. And so there's all kinds of new negotiations and new expectations that need to be discussed now that might not have been an issue prior to COVID and prior to this generation of a lot of work from home activity. And also keeping in mind that if you're creating new roles or you're asking people to take new roles, if you're going to have an office requirement for that person, you might be limiting the pool of people that might be willing to take the job or to embrace it fully. And so whenever transitions are taking place, now this is a new part of the equation that needs to be discussed. And again, I'm not going to say one way or the other whether I think in any particular case whether the person should be in the office or be working from home. That's up for you to decide. All I'm saying is it does have implications on the person's performance. It has implications on their leadership style and approach. And so make sure that this discussion now about where the work takes place and what level of interaction is expected on an interpersonal relationship or a one-on-one basis is baked into the cake and baked into the discussion and the expectations with anybody who's taking on a new role. Principle 3, and this is an extension of that, but be clear about performance expectations and requirements. Too often, I think the problem here is often the organization hasn't thought deeply enough about the person's role, or if a person's in a new role, how much planning has actually gone into that decision to either create the role or move somebody internally within the business. And so requiring clarity is critical for both the individual undergoing the transition, but also for the company that's transitioning them. So when somebody takes on any sort of new role, there should be a very vigorous and specific, I would say, discussion about what success looks like in that role, right? And if you need to write a new or a revised job description, that might be a good time to do that, because each person, even if it's an existing role and somebody's being promoted into a role that previously existed, it's a good time to take a look at job descriptions. Now, job descriptions are they are controversial. A lot of companies have kind of eschewed them, and they don't even use them, or if they do, they're not kept up well, they're not rewritten, they're not current, they're not fresh. I think job descriptions are critical, but the critical part of a job description to me is not just a dry recitation of the activities, the tactical activities that person's responsible for. They have to produce this report on this day, and they have to generate this many, widgets, or whatever the tactical description. I would argue that your job descriptions should really describe how you want that person to be in that job, and what kind of a leader you want them to be, what kind of values, principles, ethics you want them to bring forward in the job, what kind of an impact you want them to have on the rest of the organization, in terms of ideation and creativity and accountability and motivation and things like that. So either write a job description or revise it, but make it a behavioral description rather than a tactical description of tasks. Clarity is an underrated element of leadership generally, where we see our clients running into significant leadership issues in their organization. It's often just because of a lack of clarity, and that's not always just because that things haven't been communicated. It's often because the people that should be communicating clarity to the other person don't have clarity to communicate. So it's not always a matter of just being clear with your expectations. It's about you knowing what your expectations are or should be in that particular circumstance. Another way to say this is, if you're moving somebody into a new role, if you're not crystal clear about what success looks like for that person in that job, they're certainly not going to be clear about it either. So be clear with yourself, be clear with the individual, be clear with that stakeholder community that we've already talked about, and make sure that everyone knows exactly what we're striving for here, what a really positive and professional and exceptional performance in this role would look like, and what outcomes it will generate. Principle 4, map out the landscape. There's a really good opportunity here, even if somebody's taking over an existing role, to treat it as if it's a brand new role, and maybe re-envision the role at that point, to say, okay, now this is your job now. What's your vision for it, and how is that different from the vision that may have been held in that position before? So treat it as if it's a new job, even if it's just a new person in an existing job. I would argue building an influence map is a really good practice, really for any leader in any business, but particularly one who's taking on a new role or transitioning into a new role. And look up influence maps on Google. There's 1,000 examples, and they're simple. They're just ways of identifying all these stakeholders that we talked about earlier. And it's about understanding who is going to be the beneficiaries of the work I'm doing, who are going to be the people that are going to be depending on the work that I'm doing, and understanding who needs to be influenced. As you probably know, one of the issues we run into with young managers is they're often too tactical and not strategic enough. They're good doers. They're people who know how to get stuff done. They're experts. And what an influence map can do is create clarity with that person that it's not enough just for them to be an expert at their area of responsibility or the tactical work that occurs within their team, but there's a responsibility they have and an opportunity they have to influence the organization broadly and to take a more global or systemic view of the work they do, and expand their horizons and help them think of themselves as part of something that's much larger than just their immediate area of responsibility. So draw an influence map and just point arrows out from this person's role into the organization and say, here are all the people that are actually or potentially impacted by the work that you're doing. Get to know them, find out what their needs, what their interests are, do some networking, create some relationships here as a way of positioning yourself successfully in the job. And then part of your mapping is also to look at all the things that are likely to get in the way of performance and all the potential barriers. Are there problems with systems and processes that need to be addressed? Are there budget constraints that need to be addressed? Do you have the resources you need to do the job? If not, let's either pare the expectations down or figure out how to ask for more resources. Think about the org chart and what it looks like and what it tells the person about their mutual accountability to other people in the organization. Who do they go to for help? If they need this or that or the other thing, who are their resources? And make sure that they have access to those people and those resources. And then also identify up front, as honestly as you can, any relationships that may prove challenging or troublesome for that individual. For example, when a person takes on a new position, there are often people who are in that organization who wanted that position and didn't get it. And so how do we get those relationships moving forward in a positive way? I've been in this situation 3 times that I can think of in my career where I was elevated to and promoted into a role in which there were competitors for that role that I then had to work with in an effective and professional way, even though they were dealing maybe with some resentment at the fact that I got the job and they didn't. And I found it's just best to put that right on the table, talk about it, and be very open about the fact that one person got the job, other people didn't get the job, but we need to move on and we need to form productive and positive relationships. It is doable. It is doable to build trust and to move forward. But look at all the things that this newly positioned person is likely to bounce up against, or speed bumps or brick walls or whatever is likely to kind of entrap them or ambush them, and get that out on the table, discuss it openly, and make plans to address any deficiencies that you identify. And this is also just part of being honest with the person about what they're stepping into, right? If they're stepping into a new role, we don't want them to be surprised by any issues that didn't come up in our prior discussions. Principle 5, I would manage any change in any transition that any employee is going through. I would manage that as a project. I would have a project plan. I would have dates and times at which the person would be responsible for meeting certain obligations around their networking, for example, some of the relationship building. Make a list of the people that this person needs to meet with, and then check the boxes and make sure that those meetings are taking place. Do they need to learn any new technologies or any new product information, or do they need to make any introductions to clients or service providers in the that serve the organization or that buy from the organization, and make it a project. And project management, in our experience at Path Forward, is the single most consistent weakness that we see in the management teams of the companies we work with. They tend to just want to put their hands on things, get to work, and they don't stop and plan their activities as much as they should. A transition of an employee into a new role is clearly a project. There's certain things that have to happen in certain sequence in order for that person to be fully educated, prepared, resourced in order to do their job effectively. So make it a project, and ideally make the individual who's making the transition the leader of that project, so that they're showing at an early stage in the new position that they're on top of things, that they're following a plan, that they're holding themselves and others accountable, that they're using dates and times, and they're being specific about what needs to happen and what it needs to happen. It's a good way to position the person in the new role to have them demonstrate to their team and the other people they're going to be working with that they're capable of planning and following a plan. And it's just good for everybody involved. So have them manage their own onboarding project, and then have them report regularly on that project to their boss or a team of senior leaders about the progress that they are or aren't making in transitioning effectively to the new job. Principle 6, stay close in the early stages. When I've had people promoted to new positions in my organization, it's not unusual for me to meet with them daily in the first couple of weeks of their new job responsibilities. It's hard to take on a new role. It's difficult. There's emotion. There's in many cases you're learning new language, new business terminology. There's a lot being thrown at you when you take on a new role. And so having their back and showing concern and interest for them personally and how they're doing as they make that transition, it makes a huge amount of difference. I was working with a client a few years ago, and I personally recommended someone to come and take a job with that company. I helped them fill a position in their organization through someone in my own personal network. And that person took the job, and I followed up with them about 8 or 9 months after they took the job, and they had actually left the company. And the reason that they had left the company is because they said, I was just drifting. I came on board and nobody really paid a lot of attention to me. I didn't get guidance. I didn't get coaching. And I was just kind of left on my own. And some companies think that's good, right? We stay out of our employees' way and we let them do their job and we don't model. But when somebody's in a new role, especially, they need a lot of attention, and they need to know that you're observing what's going on, that you care, and that you're holding them and, again, the organization responsible for positive outcomes. So if you're the boss of somebody who's taking on a new role, or even if you're a peer, be present, be with them regularly, have lunches if you can, schedule meetings. Maybe after the first couple of days on the job, you actually schedule a late afternoon meeting each day to say, let's just review what happened today. What did you learn today? What questions came up for you today? And how's it going? And if things are going well, you can extend that, but you still want to meet with them regularly, especially in the first 90 days. Now, we always have to remember, this is true with the new employees that come into your business, but I think there's also probably some truth to it in terms of people who take on new roles within your company who are already there, that the first 90 days is absolutely essential and critical to the long-term outcomes. So in other words, if you're checking in with somebody regularly and making the first 90 days a positive and productive experience, you greatly increase the likelihood that the person will still be there 3 or 4 years doing the job. If they feel that the first 90 days wasn't handled professionally, and they feel that they didn't get enough attention and they didn't have enough clarity about their role, and there were speed bumps that showed up that they hadn't been informed of or didn't expect to happen, then they lose trust and faith in the organization. And they in many cases, after 90 days, people have already decided that they're going to check out and leave. So you can't put too much emphasis on the first 90 days for anybody in a new role. And so stay close, even closer than you think you need to. Ask them frequently how they're doing, ask them frequently what they need, ask them frequently to share with you any questions or concerns that they might have. Principle 7 in this is create a support structure. Now, something we've had some really interesting success with at Path Forward is forming what we actually call leader advisory boards, which is a team of people who take collective interest and responsibility for the other people in the organization and their growth. And so you might actually consider, for each one of your leaders, transitioning or otherwise, to have a team of people who meet with them regularly to talk about their progress, give them feedback, formal or otherwise, and build a team around them that takes responsibility. Back to principle 1 again that we talked about before. The more people, and just a good principle to keep in mind, the more people that are invested in the success of an employee in a business, the more likely that employee is to be successful. And so it's not just the boss who's responsible for the performance of an individual. It's everybody who interacts with that person. And forming some sort of formal, like, we're going to gather your team every 90 days or twice a year or however often you think you can do it. And we're just going to talk about your progress in your job, how you're doing, what you need from us to do better, and give you some feedback, positive and constructive, about what you might need to work on. So we found that it's probably a topic for another webinar, but we found that anonymous feedback isn't particularly effective. So what we're really talking to our clients more and more about over the years is how do we bring feedback into the open and make it more conversation-based, more dialogue-based, more interpersonal. And we found that people give and receive feedback much more successfully when it's when the environment is more open. So that's just something that we'd love to talk to you about. If you have questions about how to do that, send me an email or call me, and I can talk you through that process and help you get it set up in your organization. If you can, get the person help from outside the company, whether that be a coach, whether that be becoming a member of some sort of peer group organization. Maybe it's pursuing a degree. Get them some exposure to people outside of the company who can act as advisors and coaches and mentors to them. There's a lot of different ways to do that. We don't need to talk about that too much. Encourage reading and study. Sadly, the amount of reading that people do, it continues to kind of decline. More and more people are getting more and more information in short bursts from YouTube videos, which can be very helpful, but there's a direct corollary between the amount of reading that someone does as a business person and the amount of success they have and the amount of their career earnings and everything are impacted by that. So decide on some reading material and have the person do some reading and maybe have a collective reading experience with other members of their team, but have them continue to study and give them opportunities to advance their knowledge and their skills that way. And again, if there's a theme to all of this, I'll just finish it with this comment, which is kind of repetitive throughout this webinar, which is enlist others to watch out for their well-being. Again, this is a team sport. The responsibilities that we have towards each other just need to be spelled out. And I don't like to use sports analogies, but I think that there's a good one here, and that is in a good sports team, especially a team sport like basketball, for example. There are people who are known for making the performance of their teammates better. Not only good individual contributors. You might be the best scorer on the team, you might be the best passer on the team, you might be the best rebounder on the team. But how does your presence raise the level of performance of the other people on the team? In many cases, that's even more important than what the individual contributes. And so if we're really developing solid teamwork in our organization, everybody is invested in everyone else's success. And everybody wants everybody else to be really good at what they do and get a lot of satisfaction from that. So if there's a theme to this webinar, I'd have to just say, make it a team sport. So those are our 7 principles. And certainly if you'd like to talk about any of that, if you'd like to ask me any questions, if you'd like to email me, follow up and continue this conversation with me, I'd love to hear from you. I always keep time open in my calendar to have conversations with people who want to have interesting conversations about leadership. So by all means, reach out and challenge me on anything that I've said, or add your point of view about things that have worked for you. I'm very much open to having dialogue with anybody who sees this content and wants to add to the conversation. We also want you to know about our podcast. The podcast is Path Forward, Real Conversations about Leadership. And basically it's a series of conversations I have with people at various different points in their career, and about their journey as leaders and what's been in the past and what's ahead. And we think these conversations are wonderful. They're substantive, they're interesting, they're personal, and the QR code there will take you directly to the podcast. So we welcome you to listen to Path Forward, Real Conversations about Leadership, and also give us feedback about that as you go on. There are a number of different ways Path Forward can serve your organization. We have a wonderful leadership workshop. It's experiential, it's longitudinal, takes place over more than a year in time from beginning to end. I do a lot of individual coaching. I call it more mentoring work, mentoring/coaching work. And I'm focusing on that more and more as I go forward. So if you'd like somebody to work with on a one-on-one basis, or somebody who would benefit from an experienced and effective mentor coach, please reach out. And then we feel we just have a lot of expertise in helping organizations that are in a state of growth or change. And there's a lot of ways we can serve. So we'd love to hear from you. There's the contact information. Hope you've enjoyed these ideas, these relatively simple ideas. And we look forward to seeing you in future webinars, and look forward to hearing from you to open up dialogue with you at any point about any topic about leadership that you'd like to talk about. So with that, I'll say thank you very much.
We just have a quick question.
Yes.
Someone's mentioned, you have mentioned the amount of reading correlate to the person's success. Can you share a little more, and any leadership books that you would recommend?
Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, I can recommend my own book, which is Go Land on Your Feet, Not on Your Face. It presents a concept called the leadership platform, which we found to be very effective for many years now in terms of helping people understand all the aspects of leadership. I'd like to say that I have favorite books. Some of them are golden oldies. I'm a big Peter Drucker fan. There's a lot of good literature out there, and I think that the problem you have with leadership books, the type of leadership books that I don't recommend. I'll just talk about types of books. The types I don't recommend are the ones that say, well, we have one secret, and we found that you can be massively successful if you do these one or two things. And don't read books that simplify leadership. It's a complicated process. I love the book Fierce Conversations. I love the Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. I love Good to Great. There's just a lot of really good books out there. I wouldn't say that there's any one book that is going to change your life. I think it's a combination of reading a number of different books. I've also, for many years, religiously read the Harvard Business Review, the magazine. It's almost like reading a book every month, and a lot of good articles in the Harvard Business Review. Inc. magazine has a wonderful reading. Good short articles in Inc. magazine. I've found some really good writers. So I'm not sure I remember if we used to have a reading list on our website. I'll check again and see if we still have that. But there's a lot of good books out there. I'm not in a position to recommend any particular ones other than the ones I just mentioned. But read. Any reading you do, even if you don't like what you read, then you know what you don't like and you know what you want to read instead. But just read. Every day you should read. If you read 10 pages a day in a book, you'll typically knock off a book every month. That's 12 books a year. That's 60 books in 5 years. And that's just 10 pages a day. I'll get you there. But read. If there's no more open questions, I will say thank you again and look forward to interacting or speaking with any of you in the future. And keep an eye out for future webinars. We'll be continuing to do these and offer them joyfully and freely to help you on your journey. Take care. Thank you very much.